We made it happen. Jimmy was an incredible success. I don't know where he is. I got to find him. Gosh, I don't. Oh.
Oh yeah, George. Oh, George.
Right
George.
here. Yeah.
We did it, brother.
Yes, we
hey,
did.
Thanks to Dan. You know what? And in the ring with Dan and Benny. Hey, brother, man, hey, he's about the most cat. I just love him to death. I love you. Thanks for having me. Hey, you're the best. I'm telling you, brother. In the ring with
Dan and Benny.
Yeah.
We love you. Thank you so much.
Dan.
Mwah.
Oh yeah.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Dan and Benny in the Ring. I'm Dan Spaciano, joined as always by the playa himself, Benny Scala. Benny, how you doing, buddy?
Well, Dan, to coin an old school wrestling expression, was a card subject to change without notice. So our original guest is a bit under the weather, but we might have a replacement guest, hopefully.
Yeah, we may have some old friend joining us today. So we were going to talk originally, Benny, about a lot of the kind of comings and goings in the wrestling world. There's been a lot of interesting news, a lot of big stories we wanted to get to. And I was gonna kind of start with your idea in that there's been so much back and forth. I hate to sound cliche, but whether you watch the modern product or not, you cannot get away from everyone talking about WrestleMania season. The big build WrestleMania 40 is coming up in Philadelphia. You've got, for those that watch the videos, you've got the background there. And of course, the big build to WrestleMania is for the first time ever, you're going to have someone main event WrestleMania twice. Night number one, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins against The Rock and Roman Reigns, with the big stipulation being if the Bloodline wins, then anything goes on Sunday, where the main event is Roman defending against Cody. But if Seth and Cody win, The Rock promises zero interference, nobody at ringside. Roman goes it by himself. And the build to this has seen in just the last 2 weeks, really an entire spectrum of promos. You had the Cody, I hate to say it, but the Cody crying promo when he talked about his mother. And then on SmackDown, Rock cutting a full face promo in Memphis. And then last night, we're recording this on a Tuesday. Last night, Cody Rhodes proved why he's one of the best in the business with the promo he cut last night. Then we'll start with the emotional Cody side of that. What did you think about your big face conquering hero champion on TV crying about how much he loves his mother?
I mean, that part I like. I mean, we all love our mothers. Well, not everybody, but
especially
I don't know. I mean, I lived through 11 years of Bruno being the champion, and Bruno never cried. I don't know. It just, maybe it's a new age, and maybe that's going to be accepted, but I don't know. Especially in light of Rock using the term Cody crybabies, and now all of a sudden Cody is a crybaby.
Yeah, you did hit it right on the head when you talked about that, because in the modern times, I mean, the 21st century, we've seen the even any action movies, the softer, gentler action star, superhero movies, which have dominated the box office for the last 15 years. Every hero's got to have an emotionally sad backstory, it seems like. So that kind of thing where the hero is vulnerable and emotional does fit the modern term. Of course, the understanding that men in today's times, more accepted to have emotion. The whole tough guy, rub some dirt in my wounds and I'm fine, never talk about my feelings, is kind of an outlier. But in wrestling, and I'm not trying to say it's bigger or better than anything else, but in wrestling, you've got these larger than life heroes that are supposed to represent an escape. To see a wrestler at the modern acceptance of vulnerable, do you think that works? I mean, I personally, I thought it did for what Cody was trying to say. But at the same time, like you said, never saw Bruno cry, never saw, Bockwinkel cry, never saw Vern cry, never saw Steve Austin cry, for some of our younger listeners out there, or Hulk Hogan. I think the only time I ever really remember Hulk Hogan getting emotional, and it wasn't even emotional. Was after he won the Royal Rumble, they were building up his feud with Sergeant Slaughter, and he kind of tripped over his words and played it off like he was so, I'm so broken up because Sergeant Slaughter had just defaced the flag or whatever. And Gene Okerlund actually told him, he's like, take a second, get your emotions together, Hulk, and we'll keep talking. But I'm wondering, do you think it works? And then do you think it plays to his advantage when, let's say, Cody wins the belt 10 years from now when they make the Cody Roman rivalries documentary? Do you think having the emotional Cody, I'm going to hand the belt to my mother because I can't hand it to my father, do you think that plays down the road too?
Yes and no, because one thing, and unless I misinterpreted what he said, was that his father never won it in the WWF, but he was really never a serious contender. I mean, yeah, he did come up a couple of times, and yes, he did get a couple of shots at Billy Graham, but I mean, that wasn't really, it wasn't a long-term program. Right. And then by the time he came back for a longer-term run, he was wearing polka dots. And he really was not a serious contender for any championship. So I don't know where that part comes from. And I mean, fact of the matter is Dusty was a 3-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion.
Right.
Granted, his combined runs, I think, were maybe like 28 days in 3 reigns. But no, I mean, giving it to your mom, yeah, but like, Dusty, that's not really relevant. Dusty not winning it here because that was never an issue.
Right. And I've noticed too, what you hit the nail on the head. People forget Dusty was, we don't, but a lot of modern fans forget that Dusty was with the WWF, Billy Graham, in that era. Anytime you hear Cody talk about my dad never won the big one, it's Vince put him in polka dots, but he still got over, and he was the common. Cody talks about like Dusty's only run in the WWF was the 80s through the early 90s, like that Dusty era. Have you ever noticed, like, I've never heard him mention Billy Graham or the WWF other than what you just said.
Yeah, and he was hugely over when he appeared at the Garden. Yeah. Very much over. And his shots against Billy Graham they were good. Did I think he was going over? Absolutely not. But that part I don't get. If you want to do it for your mom, that's great, but Dusty's not relevant.
Yeah, I can agree with that. But then to continue this thought process, so Cody cuts the emotional promo. He's the broken, I'm going to give the title to my mom. I do it for my dad, do it for the family. SmackDown opens. It's in Memphis with The Rock. He comes out. He's got the heel music. He's got, if you notice, the Brahma bull on the Titantron has red eyes now instead of the blue. But the crowd just erupts, and The Rock comes out and he talks about he grew up in Memphis, might as well be a hometown, watching Channel 5 wrestling as a kid. And The Rock it's this huge baby face promo. The crowd on every word. He sings, he does the concert, he does the bits. And obviously at the end he's talking about, I'm going to beat Cody bloody and hand a bloody belt to Mama Rhodes. But what do you think about that? You've just exposed. I don't want to say exposed. Maybe that's not the right word. You've have your conquering face champion is now emotional. He's human. He's relatable, and you counter that with your evil corporate dominant heel. I run the company. I run the board. Rock's calling himself the final boss, which is both a play on the fact that he is a boss and video game or action references. And then he comes out and he basically cuts a face promo where the crowd boos every mention of Cody and Seth. What do you think about that being the follow-up?
I'm really kind of conflicted because he's not sending a crystal clear message. He's doing a lot of babyface stuff. One of the things he's done several times when he comes out, he kind of taps his upper arm to show the goosebumps. Totally babyface. And he, in Memphis, he's smiling. And I do believe when he said, finally, The Rock has come back, and I think he said home, and the crowd went wild for that. I don't know. I mean, but then he cuts the promo saying he's going to hand the mom the bloody belt. You know, the song. I mean, he did a song like that to he sang to Vicky Guerrero.
Yep.
You know, the Eric Clapton song.
Yeah.
But he was, you know, that was Babyface. I mean, the song could have been either way. You know, and I've noticed now. I mean, I've noticed a couple of things when he does, and the other thing is he came out by himself without the bloodline.
Right.
When he's with the bloodline, he's always apart from them.
Yeah.
He's kind of to the left, and and maybe something insignificant, but when he holds up his finger, did you notice like he kind of almost like he's making an L?
Yeah, he doesn't tuck his thumb.
Right, and then you know he did acknowledge Roman, which that was kind of an interesting segment where you know Rock is ready to go home. Yeah, Rock's ready to go home, and Roman kind of like puts his hand on his arm and goes, "I need you to acknowledge me." I guess you know in his mind the crowd wasn't acknowledging him enough, and now he wants Rock to acknowledge him. But I mean, Rock's made it very clear that although Roman is the tribal chief, he's a descendant of the high chief, and I think he used the term what final boss.
Yeah,
you got to pay attention to the language there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like you said, with the Rock kind of standing off to the side, coming out on his own, it was a good mix because if you remember when he was first doing the Hollywood, when he came back from the Scorpion King, and he was the first time he had the real big heel run as Hollywood Rock, he cut that promo in Sacramento about can't wait to get the hell out of Sacramento, and he made fun of like the Kings losing to the Lakers and all that.
Right.
You know, I mean, he's got the situation. Usually when it's a Rock a concert, it's heel Rock singing about, you know, he's obviously the Vicky Guerrero is an exception, but he's usually singing about going against the faces. But the crowd just ate it up and they cheered, and like I said, they booed references to Cody and Seth. And it really seems to me, and obviously we're going to do a predictions down the road for both us and with our friends at Monty and the Pharaoh. But it really seems like they're building to the Rock and Roman winning that tag match. And then they're almost laying the foundation of like whose side is Rock going to be on come the title match. But keeping with that thought in mind, Cody followed it up the following Raw. This would be to us yesterday with really was one of those, the promo of his life kind of things, like completely, I mean, just proved to the world why he's the biggest face in the company, why he's one of the biggest stars in the world. Just hammered it out of the park, called Rock an asshole. Got the crowd chanting something they
LDS,
muted.
Little dick syndrome.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I thought the little dick comment was certainly more fitting and I don't want to say funnier, but it was definitely better than the diarrhea Dwayne joke that Seth tried to get over.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which was absolute garbage. The fact that someone wrote that and genuinely thought, let's have Seth go out there and say it, like they thought it was going to be funny. But he talked about, you know, beating the boss, and I love the bit when he said, because you know, he talked about The Rock being on social media, where I don't know if you've seen any of his videos on Instagram and all, where The Rock is just kind of talking to his phone, you know, cutting, and he's dropped F-bombs, he's called Cody all kinds of things. It's very much I don't know how true it is. There's rumblings on some of the dirt sheets that some of the locker room is upset of what Rock's getting away with being able to say on social media. But Cody referenced it. He said, "Rock, you called yourself a heel," and the crowd kind of chuckled. And he's like, we all know what that is now. Like we can. He
gave examples of who was a heel. Ric Flair was a heel. And
yeah,
this guy was a heel. And
I love that when he's like, "Yeah, heel." You know, we all know that means you're the bad guy. And then he just kind of
right.
I thought it was great.
That was very good.
Yeah, but they're really, and then of course the big culmination of that promo was Paul Heyman challenging Cody to show up by himself.
Right.
And it's going to be Roman's going to be by himself. Cody's going to be by himself face to face. And of course, throughout the night, I don't know if you watched all of Raw, throughout the night, Cody had some of his allies come up to him and be like, you can't,
Yeah, I
you
got
can't
your
trust
back.
them. I got your back.
Right.
If you want me to go with you, which is, I think, hilarious that how they still, like Jey Uso or Seth Rollins, who was just on SmackDown on Friday, like, hey, Cody, if you want me, I'll watch your back. I'll go with you. Like, he needs permission to be at SmackDown. Like, he could go anyway, whether Cody
Right.
asks him to or not. It kills me that they can't seem to make up their mind on how the brand split works.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I guess supposedly, and if like read all the dirt sheets, that The Rock is getting heat for the fact that he can use profanity, and others are kind of constrained from doing that. But I mean, I used the analogy I was talking to Mike Monty, and I said The Rock is Vincent Van Gogh in a room where everybody else is painting by numbers. There's some kind of place in Tampa here where you can paint. You bring your booze and you paint. You learn how to paint, but you're drinking at the same time. I wish I could remember the name of the place, but
No shit.
that's what they are. And this guy's a Degas or Picasso.
Yeah.
So I mean, Johnny Gargano could drop 87 F-bombs, and he's still going to have the personality of a dead moth. It's all in the delivery, and this is like Rock is a generational star. So I mean, if I'm one of the guys in the roster, I'm just thinking, man, this guy's going to put extra money in my pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's how's the old saying go? The high tide rises all boats, or lifts all boats, or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, people when back in the day when Hogan was champion, they everybody the lower card guys, they wanted to see if they were in the A card with Hulk as opposed to the B or the C card, because they knew their payday was going to be huge.
Right. Yes, it did. Back in the territories, you got to cut. Everybody got to cut.
Right.
Of the money. If you had big stars on the roster, everybody made money. That's why. How many guys have we interviewed on our show that spent most of their career looking up at the lights, and they never complained about jobbing out or putting people over, because they were making more money putting over big stars than they were trying to be a big fish in a small pond somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it was more to them. It was more of a it's a way of making a living than their own ego. They put that to the side.
Yeah, it was very much for the family. I mean, they just had the couple 3 weeks ago, the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Earthquake on John Tenta and Tenta, and they talked about how he hated like the shark and some of the stuff he did in WCW and the Golga gimmick later, but he was putting food on the table for his family. He didn't complain,
Right.
So,
no, I gotcha.
Yeah, do what you do, and then but I want to switch gears for a minute, because you talked about The Rock being a big megastar, bringing in the eyes, bringing in the money. This past week on AEW, I know you didn't watch, but I want to get your thoughts on the ratings. AEW had their big Boston show, which was kind of I don't want to call it a free pay-per-view, but it was definitely one of the special Dynamites. Like, it had its own promotions, its own name. And of course, the big main selling point was actually, well, I shouldn't say selling point. They never officially confirmed it. They just teased it repeatedly. Was the debut of Mercedes Moné, the former Sasha Banks, and the in-ring Dynamite debut of Okada, which I say Dynamite debut because Okada's actual in-ring debut as a full-time performer was on Collision, which no one saw. But the thing is with the ratings, the lead-in, they always get big lead-ins from the Big Bang Theory. They opened with Mercedes Moné coming out, cutting her promo. It was 1 million people by the end of the first quarter. At 15 minutes, they were down to 800 and change. But the main event of the show was Willow Nightingale against Riho. Now, I know we've talked before, especially with some of the female wrestlers we've interviewed on our show, where it's sad to think about. We have more female wrestlers from that era that don't watch the current product than we do male wrestlers, because of people like Riho, where she's 85 pounds and German suplexing and, basically dominating these bigger opponents that would rip her in half, beat her to death with her own legs in a real fight. But that was the advertised main event, 600 and change, Benny. They lost almost 400,000 people in 2 hours.
Yeah, almost half their audience.
Two of their biggest dips, the main event, the 6-man tag with the Bucks and Okada. So I want to get your thoughts on those two things. One, you're trying to hype up Mercedes Moné. Do you advertise her, or do you just do what you did with CM Punk, his return to Collision, where you just teased it? They never officially said he was going to be there, but they said it was, it's going to be in Chicago. It's called The Great Return. It's, it's obvious what they were doing, but they did the same thing with Mercedes Moné, the boss symbol with the dollar signs on the logo and all. So first part of your question, I want your thoughts on this. Do you advertise her, book her, as hype it up for weeks, or do you hope to get word of mouth? Maybe people tune in to see, will they, won't they?
I think, from what I understand, what is she getting? $10 million over 3 years, something like that.
The rumor is she's getting over $30 million for her contract.
Oh, 30. So she's getting $10 million a year.
What's that?
Oh man, I thought it was $10 million in total for 3 years. But it's possible.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is apparently there's some kind of other. I'd have to look up the numbers, but they were talking about it where it's not 10. Tony Khan would be out of his mind to pay her $10 million a year.
Well,
apparently I guess there's some kind of Japan deal or whatever, but they said it could be worth up to. I have to look up the numbers. I want to say it was 28 to 30 million is the number.
Wow.
I saw.
Damn. You want to get a return from your investment if you're a businessman. You have a new product. Why wouldn't you advertise it? Clearly they're doing something wrong because nothing they're doing is moving the needle.
Right.
They have to move the needle. And I don't know that, she's going to, or Okada, any of these people. They have their niche market. What they have to do, even WWE, what they have to do is they have to attract people who are not watching right now. I don't think people from WWE are going to, flip over to AEW because of Mercedes or Okada. I don't think so. They need to find new fans. Yeah.
And that's actually, so we've talked about this on the show before, and we talked about it especially on our the 30 appearances. Is AEW kind of has decided they've got their core somewhere between 600 to 800,000 people a week, no matter what they put on, no matter who they sign, and they don't care about anyone else. There's you listen to some of the performers. They do it with Okada. He's supposed to be the biggest star in the world. They bring him in and they immediately put him in a 3-man with the Bucks, and his first feud is with Eddie Kingston, who's cooled off greatly. It's almost like they don't want to draw the big names. They don't want to draw the fan. They've decided they've got their core audience, and that's the only people that they're going to advertise to.
Yeah, but what does that do? His payroll is already humongous, and he's already losing what, they projected between 25 and 30 million this year.
Yeah.
You're adding another $10-15 million on top of that. At what return do you get from that? So, you really, truly, they have to attract new people from somewhere. I don't know how you do that, but like I said, whatever they're doing is not working. And even WWE, they need more fans. Compared to what they used to have, it's really shameful.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I want to correct you what I was saying earlier when I told you I read the article where they talked about the Japan deal. Apparently that was, I say a typo or a misrepresentation. They had talked about the full contract, which included Okada and Mercedes Moné and the foreign deal. It was something like between the two of them, they're making about $9.5 million a year. And apparently, Dave Meltzer reported that Mercedes Moné has been on the payroll for at least 2 months now.
Wow!
So it's not like it was like the CM Punk signing with when he debuted at Survivor Series, where it was basically he signed the contract that weekend. Like they could have been advertising her for 2 months,
right?
And instead they hope for some word of mouth. And now the thing is going to be like, okay, she doesn't pop the ratings, or let's say she did. We'll give her credit. We'll forget the Big Bang Theory lead in. We'll say Mercedes Monet brought 1 million viewers in, right? And then 250,000 people change the channel when it became obvious that she wasn't going to be on the show anymore. Now she did interfere in the main event, or I should say interfere. She came out after the main event during the overrun. So okay, let's say she gives you your 800 and change thousand, right? Adam Copeland, Okada, Ospreay's first match was a ratings drop. The Bucks are the coldest they've ever been. I don't think they've ever meant less in wrestling. Jericho, right, with people still heckling him about NDAs when he comes out. I mean, the New York Post ran a story this week basically saying that the WWE's lost the free agent war. Like they need to step up their game. Look at all these big names AEW's bringing in. And that article ran the same week that WWE had 18 times the social media traffic, or 17 times the social media traffic. Like they were showing the numbers where it's like Mercedes Monet's promo got how many million hits in the first 24 hours, and it was 11 million in less than the first 24 hours of The Rock's promo. Like it's interesting to see, and especially like I take someone like you, for example. You've got, we have our podcast, and we're on regulars on the 30, our Money in the Pharaoh on Thursdays. I know it's not relevant to the true crime stuff you do, but you part of what you do every week is having to know wrestling, and you still can't bring yourself to care enough about AEW to watch it regularly.
No, I mean, and you're talking to somebody who, I would say like by 1982, I could watch, let me see, I think Georgia, Florida, of course, WWF, by then it was WWF, AWA, South, I think even Southwest, World Class, I mean, and occasionally WWA, and I watched every single one of them. I couldn't get enough of it, and I can't bring myself to watch it. I just can't. I can barely bring myself to watch WWE, but I at least that kind of semi keeps me entertained. And actually, quite honestly, the last couple of weeks, I really think, the last couple of PLEs were very, Jimmy Farrow called them serviceable. I want to use the word underwhelming. Mm-hmm. But I really, my theory now is they are lulling us into a false sense of security. I really think they're going to over deliver where they've been under delivering, and I could be wrong, but I think they're really gonna knock us on our asses with WrestleMania.
I mean, this to me, and I've said it a few times already, this is the first non-Vince McMahon WrestleMania. This is the first WrestleMania since someone besides a McMahon has owned the company. And the first major event WWE's held since a McMahon's been in charge, going back to Vince Sr. in the WWF. They have to. This event has to be, WrestleMania has to be A+, 5-star, like you said, out of the park, home run. If it's anything less, there's going to be somebody that goes, man, Vince did it better. And that's the absolute last thing you cannot have that. They have to point at this and go, this is the product that Vince was holding back all those years, and go from there.
And then you want a SmackDown to get at least 3 million people on Friday nights, and a Raw to get 2.5.
Exactly. And I also think that this begins the purge. I think there's some people in place just to get WrestleMania off the table, or off the floor. And then once WrestleMania is in the rearview mirror, then they start purging some people from the front office you can't replace them a month before WrestleMania. You can replace them a month before whatever the next series of shows are, but not Mania. So let Bruce Pritchard and some of these guys finish Mania, then kick them out.
Not really, well, kind of related. I wonder if any, because the whole deal with Vince and all his legal issues, kind of has been quiet the last several weeks. I'm wondering if just timing wise, people start, throwing that stuff out there, maybe the week of WrestleMania, just to get the exposure.
You think so?
I don't know. It just seems it's very odd that all of a sudden things have gotten very, very quiet. Unless maybe there's nothing else to report, and we just gotta play the waiting game.
Well, I mean, they did say it could, the initial report came out. It could take months. It's not a very the American legal system's not very quick. So
no, not at all.
But
who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But speaking of Mania, the other story you wanted to talk about, because I'm curious to pick your brain on this one, is they're advertising for an upcoming show in Chicago, the live in-ring return. I should say in-ring, the live return of CM Punk. He's going to be live in the ring in Chicago, and it really seems like this is the part where you figure out what he's going to do Mania weekend. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought about it because we were going back and forth as who's going to induct Paul Heyman, and some thought is Brock Lesnar, but I don't know. Can you really do that? But then, if Punk is a babyface, can you have a babyface induct a heel into the Hall of Fame? So kind of wishy-washy about that. I don't think he's going to do anything at WrestleMania other than the Hall of Fame, although he might be a special guest referee. I don't know if his injury is healed to the point where he could risk that, but which I think would be great if he could do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, he just posted a video. He's working out, doing the tricep pull downs.
Yeah.
And he's what did he call it? The robot arm. He said he pulled off the robot arm, and he called Charlotte his spirit animal. Which I mean, that's always cool to see, like how quickly he's coming back. And I will say WWE has a significantly better rehab program than AEW does. So hopefully that'll push it, But now let me ask you something. If you make him, as you were talking about the Hall of Fame, I mean, is the Hall of Fame one of those turn kayfabe off for the night kind of moments where you could have Punk talk about Heyman, and Heyman comes out and people cheer for him, and he's kind of, I mean, you saw that with some people through the years that have been diehard villains come out and cut these. I mean, Jake Roberts and some of these people cut these emotional promos about how much they love the crowd and the audience and everything. I think that might work.
Just as you were saying that, I thought of Ernie Ladd, who inducted Bobo Brazil, and suppose I did listen to it once. It was actually very heart-rendering. It was, really, really sincere. It was a great promo. And, at that moment, it didn't really matter that Ernie Ladd was a heel and called Bruno a spaghetti bender and, called Andre the dummy. And, he called Bobo Brazil and Uncle Tom, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So, I guess you could do that. I guess you can get away with that. Yeah.
It's interesting to see because I'm trying to remember who it was when Jerry Lawler went into the Hall of Fame. There was someone he requested to induct him, and the WWE said no because they wanted a big name, someone that casual fans would recognize. And now I can't remember who it was, but maybe it'd be something like that where Paul Heyman might have someone in mind, and someone backstage is telling him, no, we'll have Lesnar or whoever. Because if you remember, Jerry Lawler was inducted into the Hall of Fame by William Shatner, and I really wish I could remember who it was. I'm half tempted to look it up.
Yeah.
But maybe Paul Heyman, I don't know if he gets that same level of respect or not. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and that's another thing that's been very, very underwhelming. The whole Hall of Fame thing. I mean, Thunderbolt Patterson, and I know they're gonna say here goes Benny again, but again, where is Ivan Koloff? Where's a Spiros Arion, who was huge in the the WWF against both Bruno and Bob Backlund. One of the greatest heels of all time. You got Ivan, you got Patera. Now Patera's legal issues compared to Vince's are probably minor. It's almost like jaywalking at this point. So where are all those guys? And Jimmy Farrow actually brought up a very excellent point that Thunderbolt Patterson's getting I guess the full induction, where Wahoo McDaniel, who easily had a much better career, much more storied career, kind of got the old backdoor legacy deal. So, I mean, that's another one. I mean, hopefully they are saving the best for last. They're going to drop a huge bomb that, maybe a Bray Wyatt or something like that which would be very, very,
especially with the pending documentary they have coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Our friend, What a Day Joe Lowry, posted something earlier today where he talked about his, who should have been in the Hall of Fame. And it's basically everybody we've mentioned: Koloff, China by herself. We talked about it on the 30, which bled into a makeshift. What would you call that? What we did on last Thursday, Benny? Kind of a unofficial second episode where we just kind of talked for another hour.
Yeah.
But Cindy
impromptu.
Lauper, yeah, Rick Martel, Tony Gurria. Yeah, there's so many names that.
There's a lot of heels too in the 70s. Yeah. A lot of Backlund's opponents that should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if they're gonna go and look at somebody like a couple years ago when they inducted Abdullah the Butcher, who never wrestled a single match.
Yeah, same with T-Bolt.
Yeah, then go to there's territory guys from the 70s that were some of the biggest stars in the world that never made it up to the WWF. Like, you telling me, and it's nothing against some of the talent, but when they talk about we're going to induct, these names, and you're telling me Rick Martel and Ivan Koloff aren't in yet, but you've got, Coco Beware, Rikishi, and people like that who, again, Sweet Georgia Brown, Coco Beware had a great career, but they didn't induct him as a person. They inducted Coco Beware, the character, kind of like Scott Hall's not in the Hall of Fame. Razor Ramon is.
Yeah, I mean, if you go look around at the territories, like when you said that, the first name that came to mind for me was Archie Gouldy, the Mongolian Stomper.
Yeah.
The guy was gigantic in Stampede Wrestling. I mean, the battles he had with all the Hearts and even Bad News Brown. And I think he did the same thing in Memphis for a while. He was huge in Memphis.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to go to territory, like let's be fair and like let's look at some of these, these great territory legends.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got, like you said, Mongolian Stomper. You could look at the territory wing. The fact that like Mr. Wrestling or the original Mass Destroyer. Some of those names. I mean, you've got some talent that just. I don't know. It's like you said, there's so many names. I give it the respect. There are definitely some people in there that deserve it. Muhammad Ali this year, I think is absolutely, if you're going to have a celebrity, I say non-wrestler because he's definitely an athlete. But I mean, who can you think of more than what Muhammad Ali meant with his fight with Inoki and his involvement in the original WrestleMania and stuff like that? But I mean, I really, like you said, it feels underwhelming, and no disrespect to Paul Heyman, but there's nobody on the list so far that the casual fan scrolling through Facebook and saying, "Oh my God, I remember that guy,"
Right. Or I have to watch it. I wasn't going to watch it. Now that he's being inducted, I'm going to, I don't.
And that's no disrespect to like Wyndham or Rotunda. But I mean, how many? Right. How many fans, let's say, I say casual fans, how many 10 years ago SmackDown was getting 5-6 million, let's say 5 million and change a week. Now it's at 3. How many of those 2 million fans are going to scroll through Facebook and see the US Express and Bull Nakano and go, "Oh my God, I've got to watch next week to see what happens," or I've at least tune in to see the Hall of Fame ceremony?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that, when 15 million people were watching Saturday Night Main Event.
Yeah.
Now you get, I'm assuming the same people that watch Raw watch SmackDown. So even if you have like a total of 3 million, what happened to the other 12 million people? They love wrestling enough to watch it on a Saturday night, but now they can't watch it on a Monday or a Friday.
Yeah. And considering that SmackDown does better ratings than Raw on average, there's more people. I mean, now granted, it's also a broadcast versus cable, but there's more people that watch SmackDown than watch Raw right now.
Right.
So
then I had to ask you, what did you think of well, I guess, I watched most of Monday Night Raw, and I saw those tag team matches, some decent matches.
Yes.
But I mean, to me, the tag team division has been very, very underwhelming. Judgment Day to me has been. Do we even care that they're the tag team champions anymore?
I mean, you know me, I love tag team wrestling.
Yeah, same here.
I think the matches they had on Raw, kind of shined a spotlight on the fact that they're taking the tag team division more seriously. I mean, DIY, the Creed brothers, even though they lost and in almost comical fashion, Jinder Mahal and his group, the fact that, Awesome Truth kind of coming back together, it's showing like they've got half a dozen, the New Day now, there's half a dozen teams that could credibly be tag team champion. You didn't have that not but a year ago. The tag teams were a joke. The belts meant very little. The Usos were champs for several years until Sammy and Kevin Owens took them and then kind of floundered. I really think they're building the tag team wrestling up again. It's not going to be
so, because that, I mean, in my youth,
right.
That was a key element of wrestling, and it's one of the things I think has been sorely lacking. And I mean, I really liked the who was DIY against the Creed brothers. I thought that was a very good match.
That was
really,
a
really
phenomenal
good match.
Yeah, I mean, I look at last year, they AEW on Collision, 2 out of 3 falls match between FTR, who, in my opinion, are still the best tag team in the world, against Juice Robinson and Switchblade Jay White. And that was, to my opinion, that was match of the year, 2023. It was probably one of the best tag team matches I've ever seen, period. Certainly the best in the modern era. And so you can have great tag teams that cement. I mean, you have multiple tag team matches on the show. You're not going to have a Midnight versus Rock and Roll, main event, multiple pay-per-views in a row kind of feuds anymore. But the fact that you've got, like I said, half a dozen teams that are credible tag team champions, and there's some teams in NXT that look good and could easily come together. I hope it's looking up. And my prediction, we're going to do, like I said, we'll get into more detailed predictions down the road. But I think they're going to use the ladder match to split the titles. My prediction is 2 men fight on the ladder. One comes down with one belt, one comes down with the other. Assuming they don't have all 4 belts hanging from the ladder at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's when Adam Pearce and that's when Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis come out and say, look, we've made an agreement. You're the SmackDown champions. You're the Raw champions. Done. Or I guess maybe they'll probably, you're the tag team champions and you're the world tag team, whatever they go with names they go with.
Sure.
Because hopefully they also use this as a reason to introduce new belts, because those red and blue belts are hideous.
Yeah, agree.
But
the other question I had is there anything more underwhelming than Damian Priest's Money in the Bank contract?
Senior Money in the Bank.
Senior, yeah, I'm sorry.
You know what? The sad thing is, Damian Priest, maybe not even a year ago, he was the guy everybody pointed to and went, this guy's going to be the next major star. He's going to be a big heel. I really expect 2 years ago, maybe, especially when he was doing his Bad Bunny WrestleMania stuff, I expected Damian Priest to be where Gunther is now. Damian Priest was going to be the guy that you could easily pop right in to the main event scene, big bad heel that take down whatever babyface you've got. If they were to say, if Nick Aldis were to come out, or I guess it would be on Raw, it would be if Adam Pearce were to come out and say, look, Gunther, I'm stripping you of the Intercontinental title, and tonight you're wrestling Seth Rollins for the heavyweight title, and Gunther won clean, that wouldn't surprise me. Not
at all.
The build up is just hypothetical, but I mean, if they were to put the heavyweight title on Gunther before the end of the year, wouldn't surprise me. I don't think Damian Priest is going to cash in successfully. I don't think, and if he does, it'll be like when The Miz cashed in on Roman Reigns a year or two ago, where it was one of those, okay, he's the champion, but you're literally a placeholder. Like, I know you're not keeping that belt past your first defense of it.
Right.
You know,
I mean, when does it expire? It's got to be pretty soon.
WrestleMania. He has until or maybe it's, no. You know what? Now I'm so used to the overlap with Mania. I think it's good until the next Money in the Bank pay-per-view, because they said it's good for 1 year. So
okay,
one year from when he won it. I'm sorry, force of habit. Remember when the Money in the Bank matches used to be part of WrestleMania? That's what I was thinking, that it's good till Mania, but no, it's whenever the next Money in the Bank pay-per-view is, he's got until the day of, until the next person pulls a briefcase down.
But they don't even mention it anymore, unless, I mean, again, I don't watch that closely, but I don't recall them mentioning it.
No, when he gets introduced, which is funny, when him and Finn Balor come out, because she said, you know, she introduces them as Finn Balor, Senior Money in the Bank, Damian Priest, representing the Judgment Day. Their introduction is like 2 minutes long, but every time Damian Priest comes out, they introduce him as Senior Money in the Bank. So I mean, they mention on commentary that he's got the briefcase, and they've done a few fake cash-ins where he was going to cash in and somebody stopped him or whatever. Usually R-Truth shenanigans, but I don't know. I think, let's say he does. Let's say, I mean, what does he do? You're not going to have him cash in on Drew McIntyre. So let's say Cody wins the belt and Damian Priest cashes in on Cody next week. Let's say the Monday after Raw, or after Mania, right? So Cody's only the champ for a week or a couple of days or whatever. Damian Priest wins the belt from Cody. He's not keeping it through the next pay-per-view. Maybe one, but he'll lose the belt like back before SummerSlam. If Damian Priest successfully cashes in the Money in the Bank, like I said, he's a placeholder. He's not keeping that belt long term, period.
I see him maybe attempting to cash it in, but I don't see him succeeding. I just, at this point, because they really played that down.
Yeah. No, and
he's buried in a tag team that really nobody's cared about for a while.
Yeah, they had some great stuff with the R-Truth angle. I actually thought that was funnier and more entertaining.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the biggest heat with Judgment Day is, I mean, they have the least amount. Rhea has huge heat, Dominic has huge heat, and R-Truth does.
Yeah.
They're very underwhelming, in my opinion.
It's interesting to see, especially with, I mean, and now they're having their mini feud with Ricochet, who just beat Dominic Mysterio, and now he's got JD McDonough coming up. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. But I wanted to get your thoughts, actually, pick your brain a little bit. One of the other stories that's been coming out, because we talked about this, and I know you have nothing but kind words to say about him. My favorite journalist, Dave Meltzer, recently commented that your bet, like, I know he's your favorite wrestler, so I don't want to criticize him too much, but Jack Perry is still under suspension, unofficial suspension, and he still has a lot of heat with Tony Khan and the AEW locker room, because Tony Khan blames Jack Perry for costing him CM Punk. And I wonder what your thoughts are on, one, is there buyer's remorse? I mean, Tony Khan fired CM Punk instead of Jack Perry, instead of the Young Bucks the first time. And now he's one of the biggest stars in the world. He's already a mega draw. He's a top 3 merch mover in WWE right now. And the first person, by the way, to ever be the number 1 AEW and WWE merch seller in the same month. And I mean, so what do you think? But the two-part, one, what do you think about that there's buyer's remorse? And two, Dave Meltzer said the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Do you think keeping Jack Perry off TV for 7 months and just basically banishing him to nothing, where he's in some Japan shows that no one in the States is really watching, do you think that's enough, or should he have been fired at the same time?
Well, I mean, honestly, Tony Khan should be mad at Tony Khan because he didn't handle it very well. I mean, Punk should not have been. Punk was trying to take care of business. That's all he did. And he did that in the absence, in my opinion, he did it in the absence of leadership. Somebody needed to step up and squash this. And being that management didn't, Punk took it upon himself. I mean, I think Punk's biggest problem is he wasn't very popular with the Bucks and some of these other guys. But
yeah,
Tony Khan made a huge mistake when he fired Punk, and now I'm sure the day after he did it, he probably regretted it. But how do you take it back?
Right.
As far as Perry goes, yeah, I mean, probably at this point, I mean, he's more than paid his penance. But I mean, does anybody even care if they bring him back anyway? I mean,
no. I mean, the ratings haven't reflected they miss him. He wasn't a merch mover or anything as far as a needle mover in any way. Yeah, it's interesting. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a horrible, judgment error by Tony Khan, and I think now it's definitely come true.
Yeah, but I mean, unfortunately Tony Khan kind of backed himself into a corner because he had the disciplinary committee, which, from what the stories have reported, is consisting of Brian Danielson, and a member of legal. It's apparently a 3-person committee. They said a member of legal and a member of their corporate board. So really, the CM Punk firing may have been Brian Danielson's decision. We're not saying Tony Khan couldn't have vetoed him, but
yeah, I think Tony had the final word.
Yeah, when he goes on TV and says he fired CM Punk because I feared for my life, my safety, he said, I feared for my safety, my very life. Like, how do you not fire him when your first statement is, I feared CM Punk was going to literally kill me. Like
right.
Vincent Nails,
Again, something, that never would have happened in WWE. So, if a mid-card wrestler went into business for himself on a pay-per-view, Taker or one of those guys would have been right in the gorilla's position to blast him. And that would have been the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. They would have dragged Jack Perry into wrestler's court and beat the shit out of him. Probably would have been
right. Exactly. And he wouldn't have got fired, but he would have learned his lesson for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the story of when the ribbing and which prank war and bullshit back and forth between the Rougeau brothers and the British Bulldogs ended when Jacques Rougeau, he says it was a roll of quarters, but Dynamite says it was brass knuckles, but he punched him, knocked him out, knocked some teeth out, now we're done.
I think they took those out of Baron Mikel Cicluna's locker. They were still in there.
That still cracks me up. The Dark Side of the Ring on the Collision in Korea, where they were interviewing Too Cold Scorpio, and he said that he and Hawk almost got into a fight, and he's so glad everyone on the bus was there to separate us because I would have killed him. And it's like,
Hawk, from the Road Warriors?
Yeah.
And he was glad that he should be glad they
Too Cold Scorpio was telling the story that he was gonna kill Hawk if they hadn't held him back.
Yeah, and in other news, I saw Elvis at Burger King today. Like,
I was gonna say, sure. I'm not a gambling man, but I would bet money on the Road Warriors in a fist fight.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, always we love talking about the new stuff. But I do, kind of wrapping up, I want to get your thoughts on something else too. Is a little side story that came out. They talk about the clickbait. While we were still talking about CM Punk, Booker T made a passing comment, a joke in his on his podcast that he and CM Punk, like, I'm glad we didn't see each other. Basically implying that they would have fought. And of course the dirt sheets, which, people like Meltzer that have literally caused car accidents driving to get to the presses to print bad stuff about CM Punk, ran with it. Booker T came out and said it's all clickbait. Like, it was basically a joke, no hard feelings, no nothing. Like, you guys were so basically calling him out for being so desperate to print something bad about somebody. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on that one. Here we are, how many months separated from a year now, at least, right? Year and a half from what they called the brawl out when CM Punk had that fight with the Bucks. Where, it all started with the false stories. Him being the responsible for getting Cole Cabana off television, which was a lie. The stories about him demanding that Tony Khan give him the belt, which was a lie. What do you think about these people like Meltzer? And I use him because he's the most egregious example. These journalists that would just feed on every word and don't bother to fact check anything. Oh my God, a chance to print dirt. Do you think that's kind of ruining the mantra right now?
I think it's totally irresponsible. I think a journalist reports the news. They don't create the news. And I think that's what Meltzer is guilty of doing. You're just spreading innuendo without any basis in fact.
Now, and speaking of Meltzer, I have something here I want to get your thoughts on. Yeah, let me find it, because I had to get this list together just for you. But they have the he does all the star ratings and everything.
Yes.
And he did I don't know if you saw it, I don't know if you saw the star rating, or if you read on any of the star ratings from the Sting last match pay-per-view.
No, I did not. Nope.
Well, they were exactly what you'd expect. 17 stars to everyone. The Sting Darby Allin Glass match was better than Flair Steamboat 2. But
he's got. Is he not on their payroll? He's got to be.
You would think so. The way we joke about it, but no. The point I wanted to make is, somebody asked, because we got to talking about it. He gave Ospreay and Takeshita more than 5 stars, and somebody asked about how Ospreay's broken the mold. And he has. Will Ospreay, according to the Dave Meltzer star ratings, Will Ospreay is the best wrestler to have ever been between the ropes. Now, he doesn't have the highest. Omega Okada 2 got 7 stars. But Will Ospreay has 38 matches in his career that are 5 stars or higher. 18 that are more than 5 stars, at least 5.25. His highest is 6.25. So Will Ospreay, and I don't know how much of him you've seen, but Will Ospreay has more 5-star matches than Triple H, Ricky Steamboat, Dean Malenko, Bryan Danielson, Kurt Hennig, RVD, Eddie Guerrero, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, and Dusty Rhodes combined.
Wow.
And he's also no one before 2007 has ever wrestled a better match than Will Ospreay's been in.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that?
I think it's all subjective. It's one man's opinion. That's all it is, and it's got to be taken for that.
Well, but
with an obvious bias.
Oh yeah, no, obvious. That's what I was asking. I'm not saying that I want you to argue the star ratings. What do you think? Like, where does the credibility go when someone? I'm going to go read the Wrestling Observer, and Dave Meltzer writes a story about Okada or Omega or Ospreay. And it's not coming from a place of integrity. And I'm just, like I said, he's the most egregious example. 99% of the dirt sheets are the same way. They have an opinion before they start. What do you, as a wrestling fan who maybe I'm interested? Like, if I see a story, like, how do you fact check an opinion piece?
Yeah, you can't.
So if I see
and. Go ahead. You really, yeah. To me, it's the bottom line is, I paid my money. I went to see this match. It delivered. It checked off every box. I mean, maybe technically it's not perfect, but I mean, the psychology, did it tell a story? I don't. Yeah, I mean, now it's all acrobatics, but did it move me emotionally? That's my criteria.
Yeah, I'm the how many times on the show, Benny, have we said the in-ring psychology and the art of telling a story in the ring is damn near dead?
I mean, let's face it, Bruno Sammartino, my hero. There were many matches where he didn't apply a single hold. And yet, I mean, they were great matches because the whole idea was that he, his opponent, the heel, had attacked an Arnold Skolin or an Antonio Parisi or Dominic DeNucci or one of these guys, to the point where now, Bruno's out for blood. And that's, 22,000 people bought a ticket to Madison Square Garden and, whatever they paid back then. But they didn't want to see Bruno apply a top wrist lock to George Steele. They wanted to see him ram his head into the turnbuckle and bust him open.
Right.
Nothing technical, but at the end of the night, guess what? Everybody went home happy.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think back when the Shield first broke up, when Seth Rollins turned on them, they had a build up between Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins it was one of the biggest blood feud builds I had seen in a long time. And I give them credit. The build was great. The turning on the Shield, siding with the corporate, Batista and his last Evolution run. Like, it was great stuff. But when it came to the Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins blood feud match, there were rest holds and, headlocks and it wasn't a fight to the death. It was just a regular wrestling match. And it took the wind out of everything.
Right.
So I guess that'll be my final thought to you, Benny. If you're building like today, you've got, we talk your background, we got WrestleMania coming up. Is that what you do with Roman and Cody? Do you have that be a blood feud, ram his head into the turnbuckle like you said, or does Cody try and out wrestle Roman?
I don't know. And one of the things I was going to mention, though, is one thing I noticed about Cody's promo is the last promo. Did he even talk about Roman? I mean, or was 98% of that, did he speak about The Rock? And really, who's his opponent for the championship? I don't understand that one. And maybe when he faces Roman, because he's going to SmackDown, like you said, on Friday night, maybe he resolves that part of it. But everything was centered around The Rock on Monday night.
Yeah, that is true. I guess it's almost like The Rock, like you said, The Rock's the final boss. He's got to get through The Rock before he gets to Roman. I don't know. But
yeah, I really, like I said, I really think they are lulling us into a false sense of security. I think we're going to be very happy after WrestleMania.
I agree. I think so. I am curious, me personally, I think Drew McIntyre wins the title, and I think The Rock and Roman win the tag match. So
absolutely, they have to.
Seth Rollins is,
and I think specifically that The Rock pins Cody. I think it has to happen that way.
Absolutely,
because you can't throw out the bloodline rules and then not have a bloodline match. You can't do that. So that there's the match, the title match, will be under bloodline rules.
Right. Which when Cody wins it, fighting from 18 layers of underneath, it's just going to mean that much more than if he beat Roman clean in a regular match. Yeah.
And by the way, doesn't he has a dog named Pharaoh, I learned.
Cody does?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if Jimmy can sue him for copyright.
Well, how old's the dog?
Cody, Pharaoh looks like a young pup, so I don't know. I think Jimmy got there first.
Well, speaking of which, obviously, our YouTube videos go up on the Monty and the Pharaoh page every Thursday. Me and you, Benny, we're guests on the 30, the wrestling debate and conversation show. Really, and by the way, we have last week we had a new champion crowned. So just want to point that out if anyone.
Who's that, man? I don't know.
If anyone didn't catch it, the smartest man in the room is carrying the belt once again, as it should be.
They ended my 2-week reign, my back-to-back. I was going to be the first guy to.
You came
thwarted
this
my
close.
three-peat.
Yeah, this close.
But
well,
no,
like I
it was
said,
good. It was well deserved. I have to give you props.
We always have fun with it. We got a lot of good stuff coming up in the future. We just had last week. I know you were down for the count, out under the weather. I did the remaster of our original interview with George. I recorded a new intro for it that hit again. So, once again, George is popping the ratings for us, and was very appreciative, which is really
in 3
cool.
countries as we speak.
It's really cool. It's also crazy,
but not
to think,
Greece. Go figure.
It's also crazy to think that it doesn't feel like that long ago. And I mean, you and I were just before we got to recording, we were talking about the old show. And here we are 3 years later. So it's great stuff, Benny.
Oh, absolutely. Time flies.
Yeah. Hey, what's your next crime podcast on?
It's going to be on Monday night, hopefully. Hopefully no more card subject to change. But it's going to be on the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric. And the main reason why is because recently, allegedly, supposedly, which we'll talk about, some new evidence has been has surfaced that may kind of tilt the tables a little bit.
Really interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that they killed their parents, but the original theory was that it was the defense theory was that it was in self-defense because the dad was allegedly abusive, and now a very surprising witness is going to testify to that fact.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to dig through some of my binders and find my Mark Jackson card in your honor. So.
That's right. Yeah.
For those that didn't get that reference, Mark Jackson was a basketball player for the New York Knicks.
The Knicks.
And his 1991 basketball card. The Menendez brothers are in the background, sitting front row at the game. Yeah. So I'll have to dig that out. Not as beloved as my Billy Ripken back card, but.
Yeah,
I can't repeat what's written on his bat in that picture. But
no,
but
nope.
we'll call we'll call some of our past guests. They'll gladly say it.
Oh yeah, Ken Patera will say it 400 times.
Where's Ken Patera when you need him? But always a pleasure, Benny. It's been great stuff. We got a lot of good stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Anywhere podcasts can be listened to. Dan and Benny in the Ring. Obviously, like I said, our friends at Monty the Pharaoh on YouTube. We keep growing to 30. We got a lot of good stuff. A lot of our friends just doing their thing. And like you said, you got your show. I'm currently the 30 champ. I plan on defending the title on Thursday. So again, a lot of good stuff. And we are another day closer, Benny. We're going to have to definitely talk WrestleMania. And the new era as it goes. So for the player himself, Benny Scala, I'm Dan Sebastiano. Have a good night, everyone, and we will see you next time in the ring.